All right. I think that worked. Can you let me know in the chat if you can hear me and see me? Um, my name is Toby. I'm subbing for Jeff. Can you let me know if you can hear and see me? Okay, sweet. I didn't know what else to do other than what I just did, so I'm happy that that worked. Um, okay. So really good to see everyone. My name's Toby. Um, I am an old friend of Jeff's. We go way back. We've been meditating together for many years. So I'll be leading tonight's practice. Um, and it's kind of good timing because, as many of you may have heard, uh, Jeff interviewed me on his Mind Bod Adventure Pod podcast, and that episode was released like last week. So, yeah, it's kind of good timing. So hopefully, if you haven't already, check out the latest episode of Jeff's podcast, and you can hear me and Jeff and Tasha um, jamming on all sorts of cool, fun meditation topics. Yeah, thanks for dropping that, Andrew. Um, and so, yeah, Jeff's in Portugal, I believe, which is why he's gone. So I'm happy to step in. So let's jump into it. Today, we're going to do something a little different. Both Jeff and I are kind of nerding out on this woman, Betty. I forget her last name actually now, but she has a fascinating framework called the Wheel of Consent. And so we're going to do it's kind of like a guided meditation, but it's a little different. But we're going to experiment with it. And the reason is it's currently alive for me. I've been exploring these practices, and I actually just today listened to Jeff's interview with Betty on his podcast. It's an older episode earlier today, and I was listening and I was like, oh, well, let's do this tonight because I'm literally just learning about and exploring this practice right now myself. And so, why don't I share it? So, yeah, I'll just ring the bell and kind of follow along, as you know. Take a moment to stretch up and settle in. We've all probably had busy weeks, busy weekends. Sunday evening is a nice time to do nothing. Let's all cherish these next few minutes as an opportunity to pause. We do so much through our weeks, and we do so much work in the week often and lots of play in the weekend. Next few minutes is just an opportunity to take an out breath. Just do nothing for even just a few minutes. Let's appreciate how rare that is and how special it is to find the still point amidst the chaos of life. I invite you to meditate upon, as Jeff says, home base, which is just any experience that is nice to come back to, like sounds in your environment, the breath, body sensations, words or phrase that you intentionally repeat in your mind. You can just pick any experience to stay with for a few minutes. And I'd suggest if you usually use a specific home base, go with that. Just do what feels comfortable. You're welcome to put a slight smile on your face. You may notice if you've seen statues of the Buddha, he's not frowning, at least oftentimes. He's not frowning. He's also not just kind of flat. There often is a slight smile. It's how he's represented in at least many statues. It's a simple thing to do, but can have a big impact on the body. So as we sit here focusing on our home base, just add in a little smile. Doesn't have to be big, and notice the impact that that has on both the body and the mind. Good. Now, you can gently open your eyes if they're not already open and find an object that you can pick up and pick it up. It's okay if you have to get out of your chair and go get something, but just find some object in your room. It doesn't have to be anything special. Whatever catches your attention is fine. Just go grab it. I'm going to use the bell striker, but you can find a pen or a hair clip or a fork, literally anything. And once you have your object, begin to touch, feel the object, and specifically try to notice the physical characteristics of the object. So feel the shape of it, feel how heavy it is, what parts are smooth, what parts are rough, what's the texture. Try to detect the physical characteristics of the object using your fingers. And we can make this simple exercise meditative. As many of you know, you can pretty much meditate on any sensory experience. So, right now, we can meditate on the physical sensations associated with touching this object. So, oftentimes, we might focus on like the physical sensations associated with breathing. Right now, we're focused on the physical sensations. What does it feel like on your fingers to touch the object? If your attention wanders to anything else, any other sensory experience, you bring the attention back to what the object feels like with your fingers. Good. Now we'll switch gears subtly but significantly. As opposed to touching the object in order to gather information, let's begin to touch the object in a way that feels good, in a way that we're touching the object in order to derive pleasure. So maybe there's a soft pot that just like feels nice to rub. So stop trying to get information necessarily about the object and touch the object in a way that brings you pleasure. This might seem like weird, but just, I don't know, be creative, be open. What might feel good? You can experiment with a few different with touching the object in a few different ways. Maybe you'll find something that does end up feeling good. We're just curious, playful, childlike. If you're not already, I would encourage you to move pretty slowly. No matter how you're touching the object, slow down a little bit, move more slowly. In the Betty Martin interview with Jeff, Jeff mentions a Qigong teacher that says, move at the speed of awareness. So we're slowing down our movements so that we can be aware, we can fully appreciate the sensations. We're not fidgeting with the object, we're not fiddling with it. We're very intentionally touching it in a way that feels good, even if that's subtle. This is a skill you can develop. Often skills start subtle and grow with practice. So we're practicing. We're practicing exploring what we like, practicing appreciating really simple experiences, just the touch of an object. In general, if you're mindful of a pleasurable experience, that increases the fulfillment. So notice how the more concentrated, the more clear, the more equanimous you are with these sensations. Notice how the more mindful you are of the sensations, notice how that increases the associated pleasure. Feels even nicer when we're carefully aware of an experience. All right, gently put the object back down, and you can close your eyes again if you'd like. And we'll end with a nurture positive practice. You can practice any type of nurture positive. I'll suggest a specific practice though. If you'd like, you can repeat the phrase, I am deserving of love. I am deserving of love. I am deserving of love. Repeat that phrase to yourself in your mind. And importantly, feel it in the body. I am deserving of love. Believe it and feel it. Good work, folks. Hopefully you can hear the bell. Sometimes microphones cut out the bell sound. Um, so now is an opportunity for. Okay, cool. You can hear the bell. Any reflections? Feel free to pop in the chat. Any questions or reflections about your experience, especially the touching the object part? You're welcome, everyone. Um, and I actually should say that what we just did was a very small part of a larger framework. Um, you can essentially practice. I'll just. Oh yeah, great. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I'll just explain for 2 seconds the larger framework. You can essentially practice like we just did with an object, but with your partner or even a friend. And there's like two dimensions. The first dimension is whose pleasure is it about? And the second dimension is who's touching or who's doing an action. And so that creates four different options like I am touching and it's about my pleasure, or I am touching and it's about your pleasure. And then you're touching and it's about your pleasure, or you're touching and it's about my pleasure. It's just a logical breakdown of the two different dimensions, right? Who's touching, who's doing, and whose pleasure is it about? And so the basic idea is you can do little 3-minute exercises with your partner again or a friend and really try to sensitize yourself to the magic of touch. Um, and the theory behind it is that a lot, especially in relationships that are older relationships, because this isn't because people don't think about it as a skill. A lot of times, and especially romantic touch, becomes kind of convoluted, and it's like who's touching who and whose pleasure is it about, and it just kind of ends up being the worst of both worlds. And so this practice, and that's a key word, is that it's a practice. It's not some idea that you understand and then you have it. Um, it's a practice that you do over and over and over again, and it sensitizes you. And you really just like train up in the fundamental skill, really, of giving and receiving pleasure and giving and receiving touch. And you just work on like very simple thing, like I'm going to touch in a way that brings me pleasure, for example, and then I'm going to touch in a way that gives the other person pleasure. And obviously there's, boundaries and stuff. So yeah, the idea is that you really train kind of like we do with meditation in the skill of touch in a way that leads to pleasure. And that leads to greater intimacy and pleasure and connection. So that's the broader framework. And as Andrew has linked in the chat, check out the interview with Betty Martin, who came up with it. And what we did today was kind of the first step because I gave you the opportunity to at least experiment with the basic ideas of it. So let me just see if there are any questions or comments in the chat here. Feel free to drop any questions or comments. Yeah, Amy mentioned that the touching of object was surprisingly relaxing. That's nice. I had the same experience. Um, I already have done this, but it was surprising to me again. I was just like touching this piece of wood and it was like surprisingly relaxing. It's like, who would have thunk it? Um, so I think surprise is a common experience. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, a lot of people are reflecting on how it's different what we did today, which yeah, it's good. It's good to switch it up. Um, there are a lot of ways to go about this. Jazz fans, that's a cool handle. Nice handle. Jazz fans. I am also a jazz fan. It sounds like people enjoyed my conversation with Jeff on the podcast. That's great. I listened to it too, and or right when it came out, we recorded it a while ago actually. Um, and that was just a great time. I really enjoy Tasha and Jeff, and it was really fun to talk with them. Oh, good point. Susan says it works with your pets. Um, that's great. Yeah, the it's a pleasure for both for both you and the pet. Um, great. So, um, it was a pleasure sitting with everyone. A few just like housekeeping things. As many of you know, Jeff is going to be leading a retreat at Omega Institute in like a month. Um, I'm actually going to be there. So if you want to hang out, come. It's going to be really fun. Jeff and Dan Harris and Sebene are all going to lead a wonderful weekend at Omega. So I'm going to be there. It's going to be really fun. It's a really beautiful, it's in New York. It's a really beautiful center. So come if you can. It's going to be a good time. And yeah, you also, thanks for mentioning that, jazz fans. You can also join remotely. So you can join via Zoom. Nice. Omega or Andrew just dropped the count or the link to the Omega retreat. Um, so yeah, I hope to see you there. And also, uh, I run a meditation app called Bright Mind. I'm actually coincidentally, I did not mean to do this. I coincidentally am wearing the shirt. So if you want to hear more meditations from me, you just download the app, look it up in the app store. It's called Bright Mind. Um, so there's lots of, I lead retreats and guided meditations, and I do a lot of one-on-one coaching too. So would love to stay in touch that way. I think a lot of you, some of you are already on Bright Mind. Yeah, great. Andrew dropped that link too. Thanks, Andrew. All right, it was really good to sit with everyone, and yeah, have a good rest of your week, and many blessings. Bye bye. And yeah, Andrew's also leading a sit. Thanks for all the links, Andrew. It's helpful to have a co-pilot. All right, many blessings.